Commander Lee Minho pressed his palm against the cold metal rail of the bridge, watching the massive alien ship grow larger on the holographic display. The Valtharan vessel Dominion stretched nearly 10 kilometers from tip to tip, its crystalline surface catching starlight and throwing it back in patterns that made his eyes water. Energy coursed through veins of light beneath its translucent hull, pulsing like a heartbeat that could be felt through space itself. "Sir, the electromagnetic readings are off the charts," reported Lieutenant Song Min-soo from his station, sweat beading on his forehead despite the bridge's climate control. "Whatever's powering that thing, it's putting out more energy than our entire lunar colony grid." Park Jisoo's fingers flew across her quantum communication array, her face illuminated by streams of alien data. "They're broadcasting on 7 different dimensional frequencies simultaneously. I've never seen anything like it." She paused, listening to something in her earpiece. "Message coming through now, sir. They want to talk." Admiral Kim Soo-young stood slowly from her command chair, her weathered face betraying nothing of the tension everyone felt. At 62, she had commanded Earth's defense forces through humanity's first tentative steps into the galaxy, and each encounter had left her more wary than the last. The Zephyrians had dismissed humans as barely sentient primates. The Corothian Trade Collective had offered to buy human children as exotic pets. The less said about the hegemony's generous offer to use Earth as a waste disposal site, the better. "Put them on screen, Lieutenant Park," Soo-young ordered, straightening her uniform. Around the bridge, her crew prepared for another humiliating first contact scenario. The main view screen shimmered to life, revealing the interior of what could only be described as a technological cathedral. Flowing pillars of living metal twisted toward a ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity, while holographic displays showing star charts and alien writing floated in perfect formation throughout the space. At the center of it all stood Prime, Negotiator Thurin. The being was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Thurin's body appeared to be composed of pure energy contained within a suit of armor that moved like liquid mercury. Where a face should be, swirling galaxies of light formed patterns that hurt to look at directly. When Thurin spoke, the voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that seemed to speak directly to the listeners' minds. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet," Thurin announced, each word accompanied by musical tones that made the bridge's metal fixtures hum in sympathy. "I am Prime Negotiator Thurin of the Valtharan Empire, representing 17,000 star systems and 43 billion sentient beings. We have observed your species' recent emergence into galactic space with interest." Minho felt a chill run down his spine at the way Thurin emphasized that last word. In his peripheral vision, he caught Chief Science Officer Choi Daiho making subtle hand signals. 3 fingers, then a circle. The code they had developed during their preparation sessions. Everything was proceeding as expected. "We welcome contact with the Valtharan Empire," Admiral Soo-young replied formally, though her knuckles were white where she gripped her chair's armrest. "Earth's United Defense Command is authorized to speak for our species in matters of galactic diplomacy." Thurin's energy form pulsed brighter, and what might have been amusement colored the harmonic tones of his voice. "How quaint. A single planet attempting to speak with authority. We have evaluated your technological capabilities through our long-range sensors, primitive fusion drives, basic quantum computing, simple energy weapons, barely adequate for local system defense." Behind Soo-young, Weapons Officer Yoon Da-jung's jaw tightened. The Horizon was humanity's most advanced warship, incorporating breakthrough technologies that had taken decades to develop. To hear it dismissed so casually stung more than it should have. "However," Thurin continued, "we are not without mercy. The Valtharan Empire has use for species such as yours. Your physical forms appear suitable for labor in environments too harsh for our more evolved member races. We offer you the opportunity to prove your worth through service." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of electronics. Minho could see the rage building in his crewmates' faces, but Admiral Soo-young remained perfectly composed. This was exactly what they had expected, exactly what they had prepared for. "We appreciate the Empire's generous offer," Soo-young said carefully. "Perhaps we could arrange a more formal meeting to discuss the details." A cultural exchange to better understand each other's capabilities? Thurin's energy field flickered in what might have been surprise. Most species either accepted the Empire's terms immediately or made futile threats. This measured response was unexpected. Very well, Thurin agreed after a moment's consideration. You may transport a delegation to our vessel. Come prepared to demonstrate your species' most advanced technologies. We will determine your value to the Empire based on what you can offer. As the transmission ended, Minho turned to see Chief Science Officer Choi Diho allowing himself a small smile. In his hand, he held a device no larger than a coffee cup, its surface covered in equations that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The real demonstration was about to begin. The transport shuttle Meridian docked with the Valtharan, flagship with barely a whisper, its magnetic clamps engaging with alien metal that felt warm to the touch. Commander Lee Minho led the human delegation through an airlock that seemed to analyze them on a molecular level, scanning beams of light passing over their bodies like curious fingers. The chamber they entered defied every law of physics Minho thought he understood. The walls curved impossibly inward, while simultaneously stretching outward, creating a space that his brain insisted was both cramped and vast. Geometric patterns shifted across surfaces that existed in more dimensions than human eyes could properly process, causing a mild vertigo that made several team members grip their equipment cases tighter. "Welcome to Conference Chamber 7, announced a mechanical voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Atmospheric composition adjusted for carbon-based life forms. Gravitational orientation standardized to your species. Preferences. Negotiator Thurin materialized in the center of the space, his energy form now contained within a suit of armor that looked like liquid starlight. Around him, other Valtharan observers flickered into existence, their forms less defined, but equally intimidating. Some appeared to be pure mathematical equations given form, while others resembled crystalline spiders that moved through dimensions like water. "Present your offerings," Thurin commanded, gesturing with appendages that phased in and out of visible reality. "Demonstrate why the Empire should waste resources on your primitive civilization." Dr. Park Soo-yoon stepped forward first, activating a portable fusion reactor no larger than a briefcase. Clean energy flowed through transparent tubes, powering a holographic display that showed the reactor's specifications. "Our fusion technology achieves 94% efficiency with zero radioactive waste," she explained proudly. Thurin's energy field barely registered interest. "Crude but functional. We achieved similar results 3 million years ago." Engineer Kim Ji-hoon unveiled their next offering, a quantum computer that existed as a shimmering cube of crystallized possibility. "This system can process 17 quintillion calculations per second while existing in a state of quantum superposition," he announced, his voice betraying only a hint of nervousness. "Adequate for a pre-technological species," Thurin replied dismissively. "Your mathematics show promise but lack sophistication. Perhaps we could train your people to operate mining equipment in our outer rim territories." The other Valtharan observers rippled with what might have been amusement. One of the equation beings spoke in harmonics that translated as, "They remind me of the Kethri when we first encountered them, eager to please, limited in scope." Minho felt his team's morale dropping with each casual dismissal. They had brought Earth's finest achievements, technologies that represented centuries of human innovation, only to have them treated like children's toys. But he caught Dr. Han Ji-won's eye and saw the calm confidence there, the look of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. "With respect, Negotiator Thurin," Ji-won said, stepping forward with empty hands, "perhaps you'd be interested in seeing our latest breakthrough in dimensional engineering?" The chamber fell silent. Even the constantly shifting geometric patterns on the walls seemed to pause. Thurin's energy field flickered in what could only be described as surprise. "Dimensional engineering." Thurin's voice carried notes of disbelief and perhaps a hint of concern. "Impossible. Your species achieved basic spaceflight barely 3 of your centuries ago. Dimensional manipulation requires mathematical frameworks that take millennia to develop." Several of the Valtharan observers moved closer, their forms becoming more solid as their attention focused. The equation being spoke again. The computational requirements alone would exceed their entire planetary energy output by factors of millions. Jiwon smiled and reached into her pocket, withdrawing a device that looked deceptively simple. About the size of her palm, it appeared to be made of ordinary metal and crystal, with no visible power source or complex components. "Or would you like to see how it works?" "By all means," Thurin replied, his tone now carrying genuine curiosity mixed with skepticism. "Demonstrate this alleged dimensional engineering." Jiwon pressed a single button on the device. The air around them began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, creating ripples that spread outward from the small device in her hand. Suddenly, impossibly, they were standing in a vast workshop that stretched beyond the horizon in all directions. Massive machines hummed, with quiet efficiency, their purposes unclear but their sophistication undeniable. Towering structures of crystal and metal rose like mountains, connected by bridges of solidified light that pulsed with information. "Welcome to Laboratory Complex Omega," Jiwon said casually, as if she had just opened a door to show them her garden. "We folded space-time to fit approximately 50 cubic kilometers of workspace into the original chamber. The spatial compression ratio is roughly 4 million to 1. Thurin's energy form blazed so brightly that the humans had to shield their eyes. His harmonics screeched across frequencies that made their teeth ache. This violates the fundamental laws of dimensional stability. How is this space not collapsing into a gravitational singularity?" "Oh, that's the interesting part," replied Dr. Choi Daeho, materializing beside them from what appeared to be a fold in space itself. "We discovered that consciousness can serve as a computational substrate for reality manipulation. Human brains, it turns out, are naturally quantum processors. We don't force reality to change, we convince it to cooperate." The workshop around them pulsed with life, machinery that seemed to think and reason, spaces that reconfigured themselves based on need rather than rigid programming. In the distance, other humans could be seen working with tools that bent physics as easily as a carpenter bends wood. "Apparently," Jiwon continued with a grin, "evolving as social creatures gave us some unique advantages in quantum mechanics. Reality, we found, responds well to polite requests." Thurin's energy form blazed like a miniature star as his instruments went completely insane. The readings made no sense. Energy levels that should have torn apart subatomic particles were somehow stable. Dimensional fields that should have created black holes were humming peacefully. Warning alarms screamed across 17 different frequencies as Valtharan science tried and failed to understand what it was witnessing. "This cannot be real." Thurin's harmonic voice carried notes of panic. "You are violating the Corvan principles of dimensional stability, the thermic laws of energy conservation, and the fundamental axioms of reality architecture. Your entire construct should have imploded the moment you activated it." Behind them, other Valtharan observers were flickering in and out of existence as their own dimensional anchors destabilized from proximity to the impossible space. The equation being that had mocked humanity earlier was now frantically recalculating basic mathematical constants, its form shifting between different geometric configurations as it tried to process what it was seeing. Engineer Yoon Tae-hyung emerged from behind a massive crystalline structure that definitely hadn't been there seconds before. He was carrying what looked like a wrench made of crystallized starlight, and there were grease stains on his work clothes that seemed to shift between dimensions. "Oh, that's the easy part," he said with a casual shrug. "We just convinced the universe it was dreaming." The massive machine behind him pulsed with gentle light, its crystalline surfaces reflecting images of distant galaxies and possible futures. It was beautiful and impossible, a device that seemed to think and feel rather than simply process. "Dreaming?" Thurin's voice cracked across multiple harmonics. "The universe is not a conscious entity. It operates according to fixed laws and immutable principles." Taehyung wiped his hands on a cloth that folded itself neatly when he was done. "That's what everyone thinks at first. But see, we tried the whole force reality to obey us approach for centuries. Nuclear weapons, particle accelerators, fusion reactors. always fighting against natural laws, always trying to break things open to see how they worked. Around them, the workshop hummed with quiet activity. Machines that looked like mechanical flowers were growing new tools from pure possibility. Streams of liquid light flowed along transparent channels, carrying information that sparkled like diamond dust. Workers moved between stations, some walking normally while others stepped casually through folds in space-time. Then, about 50 years ago, Dr. Kim Sang-hoon had this crazy idea. Taehyung continued, gesturing toward a memorial plaque that shimmered into existence on the nearest wall. Instead of trying to dominate reality, what if we tried talking to it? What if we approached physics like a conversation instead of a conquest? The Valthar observers were now completely silent, their instruments either broken or displaying readings that contradicted everything they thought they knew about existence. One of the crystalline spider beings had actually fainted, its form lying inert on the impossible floor. Dr. Song Hyejin materialized beside them, literally stepping out of a fold in space-time like someone walking through a doorway. She was holding a tablet that showed equations written in what appeared to be living mathematics, symbols that moved and changed as she watched them. The breakthrough came when we realized the universe has a sense of humor, she explained cheerfully. Most species approach reality like it's a hostile force to be conquered. They build bigger weapons, more powerful engines, stronger barriers, but humans learned something different. She gestured casually, and the vast workshop around them began to reconfigure itself. Walls flowed like water, machinery folded into new configurations, and the entire space gradually transformed into a comfortable meeting room, complete with softly glowing lamps and what appeared to be a coffee machine that existed in at least 6 dimensions simultaneously. We learned to negotiate, Hyejin continued as chairs that hadn't existed moments before arranged themselves around a table made of crystallized time. Coffee? We find most problems become easier to solve after a good cup of coffee and some friendly conversation. The coffee machine chimed pleasantly and dispensed beverages that somehow perfectly matched each person's preferences, including producing a cup of liquid energy that Thurin could actually consume through his containment suit. The aroma filled the space with warmth and possibility. Thurin's energy field dimmed to what could only be described as stunned silence. His instruments, the ones that hadn't exploded from trying to process impossible readings, were now displaying error messages in languages that didn't exist. Around the table, his fellow Valtharans sat in various states of shock and confusion. "You are telling me," Thurin said slowly, his harmonic voice reduced to a whisper, "that your species achieved dimensional manipulation by being polite to the fundamental forces of existence?" "Well, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit silly," admitted Chief Engineer Ko Jae-wan, as he emerged from what had apparently been a maintenance tunnel disguised as a coffee cup. "But think about it. Humans evolved as social creatures. We survived by building communities, by finding ways to cooperate instead of just competing. Maybe that's why we're naturally good at finding collaborative solutions with reality itself." The coffee tasted perfect, which was somehow the most disturbing thing of all. Physics-defying dimensional engineering was one thing, but making coffee that could satisfy beings from 17 different star systems? That suggested a level of understanding about the universe that made Thurin's ancient civilization look like children playing with blocks. Outside the comfortable meeting room, impossible machinery continued its quiet work, maintained by humans who treated the fundamental forces of existence like old friends rather than enemies to be conquered. Hours had passed, and the impossible meeting room had somehow become even more comfortable. The chairs had adjusted themselves to each occupant's preferred seating arrangement. The lighting had shifted to optimize everyone's visual comfort, and the temperature seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously to satisfy both human and Valtharan preferences negotiator. Thurin floated in contemplative silence, his energy form dimmed to a soft glow as Dr. Han Ji-won continued her explanation. Around the table, a dozen more Valthar scientists had materialized, summoned by emergency calls from their flagship. They arrived expecting to debunk an obvious hoax, and instead found themselves witnessing what their instruments insisted was impossible. "The key insight came from our children, actually," Ji-won said. pulling up a holographic display that showed the fundamental equations of reality manipulation. The mathematics moved and flowed like living things, symbols that seemed to smile. As they rearranged themselves into new configurations, adults kept trying to force the universe to obey our calculations. Kids just asked nicely and got better results. Senior Valthar scientist Kethmore, a being of crystallized thought patterns, spoke in harmonics of pure confusion. For you are suggesting that mathematical constants can be negotiated with? Research director Nam Woojin stood up and casually stepped through a portal that opened in the air beside him. A moment later, he emerged from another portal on the opposite side of the room, carrying a small device that looked like a child's toy, but was reading quantum fluctuations at 17 decimal places. Most galactic civilizations develop technology by conquering natural forces, he explained, setting the device on the table where it immediately began analyzing the molecular structure of everyone present and somehow making them all feel slightly happier. You build bigger engines to push harder against physics, stronger weapons to break through barriers, more complex computers to calculate your way around limitations. The device chimed pleasantly and projected a hologram showing the technological development of various galactic species. Every civilization followed the same pattern: discover fire, invent the wheel, split the atom, conquer their neighbors, build massive industrial complexes, strip mine their planets, fight reality into submission. Humans developed it by making friends with reality instead, Woojin continued. It turns out the universe is much more cooperative when you treat it as a partner rather than an obstacle. Thurin's voice was barely a whisper, his harmonic frequencies trembling with something that might have been awe or terror. In 3 million years of galactic history, across 47,000 documented civilizations, we have never encountered a species that treats the fundamental forces of existence as conversation partners. Chief Engineer Ko Sujin looked genuinely surprised as she handed Thurin a fresh cup of coffee. The liquid energy somehow tasted exactly like the most cherished nutritional substance from his homeworld, a flavor he hadn't experienced in centuries, but which the human coffee machine had apparently intuited from his quantum signature. Really? Sujin asked, settling back into her chair, which immediately adjusted to support her better. That explains why everyone seems so stressed all the time when we meet them. You're all trying to fight the universe instead of working with it. No wonder you're exhausted. She gestured toward the walls of the meeting room, which had become transparent to show the vast workshop beyond. Human engineers moved between machines that seemed more like living creatures than tools, devices that responded to gentle requests rather than forceful commands. A group of technicians were teaching a quantum computer how to laugh, and the machine was getting better at it with each attempt. Dr. Jiwon opened another dimensional fold with a casual wave of her hand, revealing a view of Earth that made the Valthar observers gasp in harmony. The planet looked exactly as it should from space, but superimposed over the normal view were streams of gentle light connecting every living thing, patterns of cooperation and communication that extended far. Beyond biological life, look at that, she said softly. Children in elementary schools learning basic reality shaping like it's arithmetic. Farmers asking their crops to grow stronger while offering better soil in return. Engineers negotiating with gravity to make buildings that float without consuming massive amounts of energy. The view shifted to show a kindergarten class, where 5-year-olds were casually reshaping blocks of matter, while their teacher reminded them to always say please and thank you to the atoms. One little girl had convinced a chunk of metal to become a butterfly, and it was happily fluttering around the classroom while maintaining its structural integrity. It probably helps that we evolved from social pack animals, Jiwon continued. We're instinctively good at finding mutually beneficial solutions. When faced with a problem, our first thought isn't, how do we force this to work, but how can? We all get what we need. The Valthar negotiator's energy field pulsed in what might have been laughter or hysteria. His containment suit flickered between dimensions as his emotions overwhelmed his technological form. The Galactic Council will never believe this. A species that achieved dimensional mastery through politeness and empathy. Civilizations that have existed for millions of years, reduced to primitive savages by comparison with creatures who learned to ask reality nicely. Captain Yu Jung-ho materialized from a fold in space-time at that exact moment, stepping casually out of what appeared to be a doorway made of starlight. He was carrying a small, potted plant that was somehow blooming with flowers from 17 different worlds simultaneously. "Sorry I'm late," he said cheerfully, setting the impossible plant on the table where it immediately began purifying the air and making everyone feel more relaxed. "Quick trip to Alpha Centauri to pick up some supplies. The trading post there has the best coffee beans in this sector, and they were having a sale." He had just traveled 4 light years in the time it took to have a conversation, treating interstellar space like a neighborhood grocery store. The casual impossibility of it made several Valthar scientists flicker out of existence temporarily, from sheer disbelief. "Well," Jung-ho grinned as he settled into a chair that materialized just for him, "when you put it like that, it does sound pretty ridiculous."